What's going on, everyone? Klep Napier here, reporting for comiccrusaders.shop. And today we're talking with director Renny Harlin and producer Courtney Solomon to talk about The Strangers Chapter 1. That's right. It hits theaters May 17th. And we had a question about whether or not this was actually a remake, prequel, or a sequel. And they had all the answers for us. It's time to talk about it. Let's go.
We love your. We'll just start with we love your poster behind you there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this franchise. So I wanna start with both of you. Which one of you guys is the biggest horror buff?
That's a tough one.
I can preface this by saying that since I'm much older than you, and my mother took me to see a horror film when I was 6 years old, I think that makes me a bigger horror buff because I've been a horror buff longer. Because ever since I was hooked and I was just, sold on horror.
Okay, and I will add in, I give it to him, but I mean, at 5, I don't know what was wrong, why my mother let me do this. They took me to the drive-in and I saw Jaws. Okay, I'm dating myself. And then literally shortly after that, I saw The Exorcist.
Oh.
Well, I started with Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, okay. So I said I gave it to him. I gave it to him. All right.
Well, I started at Day of the Dead, but
okay. All right. So I want to talk. 1, 2, 3. Then no.
So I want to clarify for the fans out there, including myself. Is this a prequel or a remake prequel that will be a trilogy? Clarify this for us.
I think Courtney is very happy to do this job.
I'm happy to do this job. Okay. It is not a prequel. Okay. And it is not a remake. And I'm going to elaborate for you. And I hope you share it with everybody. Okay. Because I get this question. Okay. So we love the original Strangers, right? The story is somebody I do business with got the rights to be able to do sequels, prequels, all that BS that goes with rights to the Strangers. Okay. And they're like, what should we do? I obviously saw Prey of Night and I saw what they did with Prey of Night. And I was like, that's cool. That's a thing. I get that. It's another Stranger story. And that's it. That's cool. I'm like, I don't really want to just tell another Stranger story. I really like to I'd really like to go in and investigate something further from the original one. Because I love the original one. And I was like, we can't remake that movie because you just can't. It's just not a good idea. I never really think it's a good idea to remake any movie, to be honest with you. People love, especially a beloved movie. So what we did is instead we said at the same time, I don't know how we do better just storyline wise to set up the bigger story we want to tell, right? In other words, when I say that, a couple that has a random act of violence occur and really bad stuff happens as a result of it. So when I say that, I mean that in the truest sense. So in our thing, though, we're like, what happens next? Okay. And it's not about like, I know our trailers and stuff say the origin of the Strangers and that sort of stuff. Okay. That's not, what I've read, what some people have said, what we're doing here, right? You might find out the origins and what makes somebody like that tick. That's more interesting to us and more in the veins of the original Strangers and what we did. But it's not the origin of like, oh, they did it because of this. I know nobody wants to know that. Renny knows nobody wants to know that. And so that's not what we're doing at all. Instead, what we're doing is we're telling a real amazing character piece, which is actually just one giant 4.5-hour movie. That's how we wrote it, following protagonists and antagonists as they go through some really warped and messed up shit, right? And it just stays exactly in the vein as the original. And we just honored the original to set the tone, right? Because that setup worked, right? But in a traditional setting, this is act 1 of a 3-act movie. When you're watching chapter 1, you're only looking at act 1. So I would say if you really want to judge it as an OG, I'm being blunt with you, okay? You judge it after you watch all 3 chapters, because judging it on its own from 1 is not a fair assessment.
Now, what can you guys tease about the upcoming chapters? Are we going to be following the protagonist or primarily the antagonist going forth?
You're going to be following both.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, there's
Right.
some really cool twisted
You
scenes in
might,
this thing. Go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No,
There's
you.
some real cool twisted scenes in this thing that I wanted to kind of talk about. Primarily one without giving out too many spoilers. It revolves around rats and a nail.
And not necessarily in that order, but you never know.
Talk to
Yeah,
me about filming that. Was that built or was that actually under?
Well, first of all, I want to preface this by saying that, like Courtney said so eloquently, we really love the original film and we wanted to honor it. So we didn't want to copy it by any means,
Yeah.
but we wanted to replicate that experience of dread and stress and terror that those characters went through. And we wanted to have certain touchstones from the first movie that the audience could relate to and see, like, okay, this is the Strangers universe. I feel familiar with those certain emotions, but we wanted to make this our own story. So there will be scenes that will evoke the same kind of feelings, but they won't be copies of the scenes from the original movie. And you mentioned the sequence that involves rats and nails. And for that, it's a prime example of something that seems fairly simple to do, to tell the story of that sequence in the movie, but to shoot it in a real environment would be completely impossible. You couldn't fit the actors there, you couldn't fit the camera there, you couldn't light it, you couldn't do anything. So we built that whole environment, but tried to make it as realistic as possible so that everybody who's ever been in an oldish house would relate to there being that kind of a space where you could maybe come in contact with some rats and nails.
Yeah, you guys nailed that scene. There are a few other scenes that really are different from its original, and I can't wait for people to see those, especially new people who are new to the franchise, because I think there's a lot there for people who aren't so familiar. You guys make sure you're checking out The Strangers Chapter 1 in theaters May 17th at a theater near you.